All right, so welcome to the weekly homework information behavior modification step 6 video. And what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be going over the steps to start our treatment phase. So the day has finally come. We are done with our baseline. We are now going to begin our treatment phase in our semester-long behavior modification project. So we have a lot of different steps that we need to take in this week's homework in order to begin that treatment phase. So please be sure that you pay very detailed attention. Make sure that you do each of those steps so that we can begin the treatment phase and we can have as much success as possible. So let's set ourselves up for success. It all starts here with the information for this weekly homework. So in this beginning of the treatment phase, the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to choose our target behaviors. So we're going to have 5 target behaviors that we are going to possibly modify. So we're going to modify them. We're going to modify them at different times. So we are doing a multiple baseline across behaviors project here. So we are going to introduce treatments at different times to these different behaviors, and that's why we need 5 behaviors. So the 5 behaviors that we are going to use are going to be the mindfulness training, it's going to be the logic training, it's going to be the daily writing, and then it's going to be 2 of your clockify behaviors. And the way that you're going to identify which 2 of those clockify behaviors is we are going to use our target behavior ranking matrix. So the first step that you need to do for this homework assignment is go to your target behavior ranking matrix. That was the homework assignment last week. And you're going to identify the highest ranked clockify behavior, and you're going to identify the second highest ranked clockify behaviors, and those are going to be your 2 target clockify behaviors. So for those clockify behaviors, be sure that you can either increase or decrease the duration of those behaviors. So be sure that they're one of the 6 behaviors that you can increase the duration of. So for example, study time, you can increase how long you study, or you can decrease them. So for example, if you're streaming Netflix a lot, you can decrease the amount of time that you spend on Netflix. So be sure that you can either increase or decrease those 2 behaviors. You can have 2 behaviors that both you can increase. You can't have 2 behaviors that you both want to decrease. That's fine. But just make sure that you're in control of the duration of those behaviors. Otherwise, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to choose the next highest ranked clockify behavior. So go through your ranking matrix, choose the highest clockify behavior that you can modify the duration of, choose the second highest ranked clockify behavior that you can modify the duration of, and those are your target clockify behaviors. So that's step number 1. Identify those 2 highest ranking clockify behaviors using your target behavior ranking matrix. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to amalgamate all of our behaviors into a single Excel sheet. So we're going to amalgamate all the behaviors that we're tracking into a single Excel sheet. And that is the Excel sheet, that weekly homework step 6 baseline and treatment phases Excel sheet. So this is where you are now going to transfer all of the data you have been collecting on your behaviors up to this point. So you can see here that we have mindfulness training. So you are going to go to your mindfulness training Excel sheet, and you are going to transfer those session lengths and volumes into this data here. So for example, let's say that we started on the 24th of January, and I'm just going to put in some random data there so that we can have just something that we can look through. So you're going to enter in your durations, the recorded behaviors that you had. Now you can simply copy and paste this from your original Excel sheet here, but make absolutely sure that you copy them into the correct dates. So make sure that you copy your data into the correct dates. Double check that, because that is a very important part of this modification, because we have to make sure that we are entering our data into the dates where we actually performed that particular data. So you are going to enter in your data for the mindfulness. You are going to enter in your data for your logic training. So logic training started, for example, a week later. And then you are going to enter in your data for the daily writing. And for the daily writing, very carefully, this is weekly. So it's set up just like it was set up in the original Excel sheet where we are recording the average per week. So here we are going to record the data, but it's only going to be the data that is coming soon. So for this first week of this, we are not going to have any data here in the daily writing because we're only going to be recording the one that's coming soon. And I'm being a little mysterious about that, but it'll make sense later on when we get there. All right, and then finally, we have our highest ranking clockify behavior, and that one you're probably going to have a lot of weeks on because we've been doing that one since the beginning. And then you also have your clockify behavior number 2. And for many of you, you'll have gaps in this because remember, we were only doing 5 out of 7 days. So whatever your data looks like, however much you have, make sure that you transfer that and transfer it into the correct dates. So double check to make sure that you are transferring these things into the correct dates because that is going to be very important because what this Excel sheet does is it sets up for us a multiple baselines across behavior project. And that is what we get right here in this chart. So this chart is where the bread and butter of this is going to come in. This is now a graphical display of the change in your behavior. And this is a baseline phase, so we're probably not going to see a lot of change in any of the behaviors. You might see a lot of change for maybe in the logic training because you've just gotten better at the logic training, but we're not going to see a lot of change in the behaviors. And then what we're going to do is we can see here that we have now every behavior that we've done. So we have mindfulness training, logic training, daily writing. We're going to populate that at a later time. We have our highest ranked clockify behavior, and we have our second highest ranked clockify behavior. And this Excel sheet has scaled them so that the second highest ranked clockify behavior, it'll give you the relative amounts of that behavior so that you can see any trend or changes in that behavior. But it scales it so that it's at the bottom of the graph here and that your highest ranked behavior is directly above that. Daily writing will be directly above that. Logic training directly above that. And then mindfulness training directly above that. And that is what we mean by scaled behavioral measurement. So don't worry too much about the absolute values of these numbers here. More concentrate on the fact that in this area here, we can see a very steady amount of behavior. In this area here, for the highest rank clockify behavior, there was an initial decrease followed by an increase. Basically, treat each of those little strips as an individual graph to analyze the behavior because we're going to do a visual analysis of this at a later date. So we have this graph and it's immediately populated by the data that you entered into the daily scores here. So again, make sure that you do those daily scores correctly. And then the last thing that we need to do for this particular assignment is we need to take this line here and we need to move it to the date when you start this week's assignment. So if you were to start this week's assignment, let's say tomorrow, when are you watching this video? Let's say that you started this week's assignment on February 18th. You're going to want to take this line, move it to February 18th, and then extend that line all the way down. So this is a condition change line. And we're going to make sure up here in format, we can go to format. And then over here, just make sure that that width goes back down to 0. So we have that nice straight line. But this is your condition change line. And this is going to tell us when we begin changing, when we begin treating our mindfulness training while we're leaving all the other ones untreated. So we're going to continue on recording our behavior for our other 4 behaviors here while we modify the mindfulness training. And this lets us know when we started that modification on mindfulness training. And it also gives us a visual way of knowing when we began mindfulness, the modification of the mindfulness training without trying to modify the other behaviors. And that's very important, what we're going to be using for a future analysis. The last thing I want to point out is that there's a third page here called calculations. This is where all the magic of this Excel sheet occurs. Do not touch this thing. This is one of the most extensive Excel sheets I've ever put together. Do not modify anything here. If you do, you will highly likely mess up a lot of the things that are occurring here, and you'll have to start all over with your Excel sheet. So don't modify that. Leave it alone. Basically, what we're looking to do is to transfer our behavioral measurement of mindfulness, logic training, daily writing, highest ranked Clockify behavior and second highest ranked Clockify behavior into this Excel sheet here. For mindfulness, logic, and daily writing, you can copy and paste that directly from the Excel sheets. For the highest ranked and second highest ranked Clockify behaviors, you will have to get that information from your Clockify export. So just use the Excel sheet to be able to Clockify, to export that detailed information, get the duration for each day that you performed that behavior, and then enter that information into this Excel sheet. All right, and so that's what we're going to be doing for this first half of the step 6 baseline and treatment phases, so that we have a visual representation of those baseline and treatment phases. The second phase is to actually start treating the mindfulness training. So what we're going to be doing for that is we're going to be doing shaping, and we're going to be doing fading. So the shaping, let's start with that. What we're going to be doing is we're going to start shaping our mindfulness training, and we are going to increase the duration of our mindfulness training. So we are no longer going to be trying to go for 3 minutes minimum. Now we're going to increase our minimum amount, and I'm going to show you by how much in just a moment. So we're going to try to increase our minimum amount, and then also we're going to fade the noise that we have been using during our mindfulness training, because we want to get to a point where we can focus in on this training at any noise level, regardless of the distractions that are going around. And the way that we're going to get to that is we're going to fade our noise level down. So how much are we going to fade our noise level? And more importantly, how much higher are we going to do are we going to shape our behavior, our duration of mindfulness training? Well, to do that, we are going to go to our second Excel sheet for homework step 6. So this is homework step 6, reinforcement criteria. And what you're going to be doing here is you are going to, first off, transfer in some of your daily session length for your mindfulness, your baseline measures of your time in seconds on your logic training, your baseline measures for coming soon, not yet, coming soon for your daily writing, and then your baseline durations for your highest ranked and your second highest ranked Clockify behavior. So you are going to be putting in your baseline measures for this. And the most important one, the most important one right now is your mindfulness amount. So let's say that, let's go with that. All right, so let's say that this is how many seconds that you were doing your mindfulness training. So transfer your measured amounts into this baseline analysis Excel sheet. And what this will do is it will calculate out for your recorded baseline measurements. Remember, we wanted to get that nice stable baseline. It'll record, or it'll figure out for your recorded baseline measurements, what was your minimum level? So in this case, we have a minimum level of 184 seconds. So 3 minutes and 4 seconds was the minimum amount of time that you spent mindful in your mindfulness training. Your maximum amount of time was 239 seconds. So we have almost 4 minutes of mindfulness training in that example, and your average level. And then what this Excel sheet will do for you is it will calculate, based on behavioral modification guidelines, it'll calculate what your new length is, that is your new minimum length. So it'll help you shape your behavior by choosing your new minimum length. And in this case, we're looking at 226 seconds. So your new minimum length, it's lower than your maximum length, but it's higher than your average length. And what that does is it gives you something that you know you can do, because you've done more than that previously, but also something that's a little bit more challenging because we know it's above your average level. So in this case, it's going to be 225 seconds. So that is going to be just under 4 minutes. That's like 15 seconds less. That's 3 minutes and 45 seconds. So we're not asking you to increase it by, double it or triple it. We're not going up to 9 minutes all of a sudden here. We're going to something that's very doable. In this case, it's going to be 3 minutes and 45 seconds. And when the time comes, we're going to be able to do this for all our behaviors. We're going to be able to do this for all our behaviors, and it will give us the information that we need if we want to increase that behavior or if we want to decrease the behavior. So in the future, we're going to try to decrease our time doing the logic training. So we're going to try to get faster at doing logic training, and you're going to get rewarded based on whether or not you reach that new criteria, but that's in the future. For this current homework assignment, step number 6, the only one that we're interested in is the mindfulness training. So find out what that new level of mindfulness training is, what is your new minimum, and that's going to be your new minimum for this coming week. All right, so, and then the last thing is that we're also going to fade the volume. So we're going to lower your volume so that eventually we can get rid of that white noise that's been playing in the background that's been enabling or helping us to focus in on the work on the mindfulness training. We're going to start fading that. So what you're going to do is you're going to fade that by 20%. So what that means is that if you had a volume control that went up to 100 and you maxed out at 100, well, now you're going to be doing it with a volume of 80. If your volume is only has 10 levels and you maxed out at 10, now you're going to be doing it at 8. If you only had a volume level of 5, now you're going to go down to 4. So calculate out what 20% of your current volume level is, and then that's going to be your new volume level, 20% lower than what you did previously. And we're going to increase the time based on the reinforcement criteria calculation that the Excel sheet does for you. That's going to be your new minimum time. All right, so those are all the pieces that we need. So what are we going to be doing? One last little checklist for this week's homework assignment. So first off, we are going to continue tracking behaviors. So we're still going to continue tracking behaviors. However, from here on out, we only need to track those 2 target Clockify behaviors in Clockify. So previously we were tracking 10 behaviors. You can continue doing that. I always think that's a great insight to have. It's to see where you're spending your time. But in this case, from here on in for the homework, we only need to track those 2 target Clockify behaviors. So again, see homework step 1 for details on how to do that. Those are the only 2 behaviors that we need to track for Clockify. We are still tracking the mindfulness training. However, now we're increasing the duration based on the reinforcement criteria calculation that we do in this Excel sheet. We're increasing the duration. We're decreasing the sound by 20%. The logic training, continue with the logic training. See homework step 3 for details on that. And continue with the daily writing. And see homework step 4 for details on that. And then what you're going to submit for this homework assignment is you're going to submit weekly homework step 6, baseline and treatment phases Excel sheet. So you are going to submit this Excel sheet with the graph, with all your data transferred in there, with that conditional phase line. Make sure that that is in the correct position. And then you are also going to hand in your weekly homework step 6 reinforcement criteria Excel sheet with the entered baseline data and the calculation for your mindfulness training. What is your new minimum for your mindfulness training? Make sure that you're doing these 5 out of the 7 days. And that is it for homework assignment step number 6. So I can't wait to see how the treatment phase is going to begin. I'm very excited that we are now starting to actually modify our behavior for the better. We're going to improve our mindfulness so that by the time we get to this semester's exam session, we have a much stronger mindfulness training, much more able to focus and bring our focus back to tasks and all the concomitant benefits that's going to have for the exam period. So I can't wait to start developing that actively. Can't wait to start this behavioral treatment phase. So good luck. Make sure that you follow all the steps. There's a lot of steps there. But other than that, we are done for the day. Can't wait to see how we modify behavior. Stay frosty, stay functional. go modify some behavior. Is today we are finally getting to our first treatment phase. So I am going to take a look at my outline because I can't do this just off the top of my head. And we're going to start that all over again.